Hey girl. Okay, fair warning, this turned into a bit of a rant. I would say that I'm sorry, except I'm kind of not. So I promise I do eventually get around to how my husband and I manage each other's needs and expectations in our marriage, so that neither of us gets burned out by this whole parenting gig. It just took me a minute or two or three to get there. One thing you can never control and thus should never waste any energy on is what other people think about you. But when it comes to your family, the people you share a home with, this mentality doesn't always work. This is a delicate topic to cover, and the nuances of every relationship make it difficult to talk about in broad terms, but I'm going to attempt it. First and foremost, I'd like to point out a subtle nuance a lot of people miss when they're talking about expectations, especially in relationship. There is a huge difference between expectation and need, right? So let me dip into a few of the usual societal norms to illustrate this. A woman might expect her husband to mow the lawn on the weekend, but she doesn't need him to do that. What she might need is not to have to worry about whether the yard work is done because she has enough on her plate. Makes sense, right? And a man might expect to have a hot meal be waiting for him when he gets home from work, but he doesn't need his wife to prepare it. What he needs is to feel loved and appreciated. So, obviously, when you're in a relationship, you care about the other person enough to address their needs, but you can't address all of their expectations. While you may not feel like doing yard work this weekend, it's not a need, you can assure your wife that you'll take care of it later on to address her need to know that it's going to get done without her having to intervene. And there are other ways to be loving and supportive to your partner that don't involve working with chicken, which is disgusting. Wolf. You can be just as supportive over Chinese takeout, right? So just because we women have been conditioned to think of ourselves as tireless providers doesn't mean we have to burn ourselves out meeting the many needs and expectations of everyone that's in our orbit. You can be an amazing mother, an amazing wife, an amazing fill in the blank without having to conform to someone else's definition of that role. Our value, your value, is not determined by your relationship to other people. I'm going to say that again. Your value is not determined by your relationship to someone else. You are not some two-dimensional, vacuous bimbo in a movie whose only purpose is to serve as the love interest for the hero, or his tirelessly devoted mother doling out baked goods and quippy one-liners in equal measure. Hells no. You are the strong and fierce main character of this story. There you are, standing tall, staring down villains, armed only with your brilliance and your dry shampoo. Fueled by coffee and your sense of justice, you are both author and heroine. Your victory is inevitable because you control the story. You are mistress of your own destiny. So why is it that so many of us feel burdened by the expectations of our loved ones and society to be the sort of woman and mother that they want us to be? It seems a little, backward. And dare I say it, unhealthy? Whenever I feel compelled to adapt to someone else's best version of me, I ask myself how I would want my daughter, or my son for that matter, to act in this moment. Would I want them to feel trapped and obligated? Or would I want them to feel empowered to resist being true to anything but their own beliefs about their own self-worth and who they are as individuals? And when you frame it in that light, the answer is pretty obvious. At least it is to me. But I've always been a tad rebellious. What can I say? The status quo bores me to tears. So, for better or for worse, my advice to you when it comes to managing other people's expectations is don't. The way I see it, it's just not your problem. Now, when it comes to managing the needs of my family, I gotta say, I don't find it that cumbersome. I kind of like being a mom and all the work that comes with that title. And I love my husband. It's kind of gross how much. He supports me as much as I do him. And while our marriage, like any marriage, takes constant work, our friendship is rock solid. You want to know how we keep it that way? There are 5 parts to having a healthy and productive conversation with your spouse to make sure you're on the same page about what you both can expect from each other. Number 1, respect. It's important to recognize that giving your partner the time and space he or she needs to do their thing isn't a sacrifice, it's an act of love. I love and respect my husband, so naturally it's important to me that I support him in the things that he's passionate about. While I may not understand what he's doing most of the time, I understand that it's important to him and I give him the space to do it. And he does the same for me. Number 2, communicate your needs. Communication is key. Duh, everyone says it, but it's cliche because it's true. But you can't meet any needs you aren't aware of. Obviously, the kids come first, and then us, and then the housework in that order. I know Jason's rating and recording and streaming schedule, and he knows my work schedule, when I want to work on comics, and when the deadlines are. If one of us needs to add something to the schedule, we just let the other person know what we need, and we come to an agreement. My schedule tends to be a little more flexible than his because most of the stuff I do on my own, whereas he's coordinating with multiple other people. So I'm happy to move my stuff around if I have to. If we need or want something outside of our normal routine, it's usually as simple as asking the other person. We know that we have each other's back, so even though it's not ever 50-50, it always feels fair. Number 3, agree to boundaries. Once upon a time, my husband's computer and studio setup was in our bedroom, as was my computer and drawing tablet. And left to his own devices, the man will queue into game after game with his buddies until they drop off for the night. As you can imagine, that was pretty disruptive to my rest, and this mama loves her sleep. I brought this to his attention, and we agreed on a time by which he would log off every night. And then we converted our dining room into an internet cafe / recording studio so he can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, as late as he wants. And that works out too. Which brings me to number 4, which is the check-in. It obviously took a few iterations of our schedule to get to a place that we're both comfortable with. So the check-in is pretty important. Sometimes what seems like a great idea on paper doesn't work out in practice. So don't be discouraged if you have to go back in and tweak the schedule a little bit. Now, I know it might seem like we're ships passing in the night, handing off childcare duties to each other, and sometimes it does seem that way, but the babies are little and require constant work and supervision. Even if you have little kids, you're both going to need your downtime. And just because someone isn't on duty doesn't necessarily mean that they're not around. I mean, in our house, there are times when we come together to go for a walk or share a meal, or just sit around and watch the babies make a mess. Number 5. Bring it in. We're also very careful to make sure that we're making time to hang out together, one-on-one. Now, this is critical in any relationship, of course, and it's especially tricky when you have young kids and you're committed to giving each other space to pursue individual interests. I mean, there are only so many hours in the day. And if I'm being honest, this is where we fall short the most. My husband and I have different ways we like to relax, and neither of us is particularly fond of the other's preferred entertainment method. He likes video games and I like Netflix. So despite deciding on how to spend date night often feels like much more of a compromise than any of the other scheduling gymnastics we do to accommodate our individual hobbies. I'm just kidding about that, mostly. We believe that great parents have great lives. You can only be a great mom or dad, and you can totally be a great mom or dad and still have a life. And more importantly, you have to fill your cup. Exhausted and burned out parents running on nothing but coffee probably aren't parenting at their best. So don't be afraid to talk to your partner if you need more time to pursue your interests outside of motherhood, or even just for a little bit of downtime. If you've made it this far and you're thinking, ain't nobody got time for that girl, I'd like to challenge you to a week of taking better care of the woman who takes care of everyone else. And if you don't even know where to start with that, I got you covered. I've done the heavy mental lifting and created a list of 10 quick, easy things you can do for yourself today to take your self-care to the next level. Click on the link below and grab your copy. And I hope you found this video helpful. Please like and share it to help spread the word. And leave a comment with any suggestions that you use to keep the lines of communication open in your relationships. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss next week's episode. I'll see you then. Take care.